Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's good to see you, Mr. Administrator, Senator, Captain, Astronaut. There are seldom times where I get to see somebody who has as many titles as I do and more, and actually somebody who I'm a little envious of as somebody who's actually done something I want to do that I haven't been able to do. As a matter of fact, if you have any advice for a guy who would love to follow your tracks into space someday as a doc and pilot, just let me know. I'll be happy to meet with you for lunch.
We need medical doctors to go to Mars.
I'm sure a lot of my constituents would like to send me there. Appreciate you being here today. In all seriousness, NASA and space exploration are vital for our national security, economic growth, scientific advancement, international prestige, and our inspiration as Americans. Just recently, Venturi Astrolab Incorporated, a startup founded by a veteran spaceflight robotics engineer, has unveiled a groundbreaking prototype of a lunar rover, the Flexible Logistics and Exploration Vehicle, FLEX. If NASA integrates FLEX into the Artemis program, it will mark the return of passenger-capable rover to the lunar surface since Apollo 17 in 1972. It's this kind of discovery that inspires the future generations of scientists, engineers, and explorers. It's pretty exciting to me, too. With this being said, NASA has been plagued by the same issues for years: constant deadline extensions, flawed cost estimating processes, and poor financial management. Administrator Nelson, in your testimony, you highlighted the great success of the International Space Station and the milestone of 23 years with continuous human presence in low-orbit Earth. As NASA approaches its 2030 deadline to decommission the International Space Station and aims to transition to a commercially owned and operated platforms in the low Earth orbit, do you believe that NASA has an obligation to ensure continued human presence in the low Earth orbit?
Yes.
Great. And you know, it's funny, I'm going to get a little bit off track. We just recently talked about some of the pollutants and how Earth might be warming. And I agree, there might be climate change. I think the one thing that worries me is that we get away from science. In a Senate article that was published back in 2007, it talked about the heating of other planets in our solar system. This is back in 2007. It's continued. Would you say there's more concrete, carbon dioxide, and vehicle emissions in Neptune, Jupiter, and Mars during this period of time, just like there is in this Earth?
I don't know.
I would say probably not, because I don't know of anybody who's building concrete or who has vehicle emissions in those planets they're also heating. I would say that's pretty much factual, unless you know some life that you haven't told us about so far.
Well, what I do know is that we are seeing the heating up of the Earth, and our instruments have indicated that, and we've seen...
Wouldn't discount that at all, sir. And I'm just saying that it's happened to other planets in the solar system, too, that don't have the same challenges we do. Now, I want to be scientific. You and I are scientists by nature. We love facts. We love to talk about things that matter, things that we can change. But I also don't want to waste time and money on things we cannot change. Back in the 70s, we were talking about global cooling during some of the highest carbon dioxide emissions of all time. And we've seen decreases in certain pollutants while the Earth is heating. So I just want to have a scientific conversation with you and I about what's really causing the heating, and can we affect it, or do we need to put our money elsewhere to help us adjust for those while the Earth continues its natural cycle? Because I am a scientist. I do understand how much carbon dioxide is there and how much the United States produces as a global percentage of that carbon dioxide. Would you agree that it could be due to something other than methane and carbon dioxide that's causing the Earth to heat?
Well, there are multiple.
There you go. Yes, sir. And that's what I agree with you 100% as a scientist. Multiple factors, some which we can and some which we cannot affect. I just want to see our money go to the right place. I know I'm almost out of time. I'm going to ask you one more question. Commercial and international patterns are key to the success of the Artemis campaign. The Commercial Lunar Payload Service, the CLPS program, housed within the Science Mission Directorate, has resulted in the first ever landing on the moon by a commercial entity and the first U.S. landing in over 50 years. Are there opportunities beyond the Commercial Lunar Payload Service where the Artemis campaign and Science Mission Directorate have mutual interests in the development of commercial capabilities?
When we are going back to the moon as a result of, I take it back to the 2010 NASA authorization bill, we said we're going to do it in a different way. We're going back with commercial partners. The CLIPS program that you just mentioned, interestingly, is like we are sending scouts into the wilderness ahead of time on the South Pole to scout out for us before we get our astronauts there on the surface, so that we've got a better idea. One of the things that we're clearly looking for is water. We've got a couple of instruments that are going this year on CLIPS missions. One called Intuitive Machines that is actually going to be digging on the South Pole to see if there's water content. We know there's water there because we've seen the ice in the crevices of the constantly shattered rocks. But this is all a part of making the space program something larger than just as we went to the moon before. And we're going to the moon, by the way, not just to go to the moon. We're going to the moon to learn how then we can go all the way to Mars and beyond.
Thank you, sir. I'm without time, so I yield. Thank you.
I'd like to recognize